Three. What's up, Todd?
Hey, Rhett.
It's good chatting with you again.
Yeah,
I was
quite a
like,
bit today. It was
yeah,
good.
and I like to start off if people are just jumping in this video for the first time. Tell them a little about the South City Group and the executive coaching work we do there.
Yeah, so South City Group, again, we are a small boutique executive coaching and development firm. We work with anyone from small business owners all the way to Fortune 500 corporate, typical corporate vice presidents, C-suite leaders, directors, anyone that's a people leader. And if you lead teams, then we come alongside and help you galvanize greatness in yourself first, so you can scale that greatness to your team and to your organizations. But we're uniquely actually trained also on the clinical side of psychology as well as the leadership side. So we, in fact, Rhett, you and I are both licensed marriage and family therapists. So we are systems thinkers, and we want to address the whole holistic wellness. So not just who you are with your business and your teams, but who you are with if you're married, with your spouse, and if you have kids, with your family. Who you are holistically.
Since we're trained therapists, this means we got it all figured out, right? In our relationships and parenting right now.
Well, luckily I'm at the co-work space. I don't have my kids running around the office here with me to disrupt me right now to prove otherwise.
Something you and I were talking about, we're just noticing that it seems like people are struggling. They're at home working, and now the pressure maybe to work more than ever to prove themselves, maybe fear of losing a job, or to try to add value to the conversation. I even got the sense in the beginning I was sending a lot of stuff to people too, because I'm trying to add value to their lives, and everyone's
absolutely.
Burned out and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So what is it that you've really been noticing just as you've been working with leaders and kind of seeing happening in the culture?
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing, obviously, is what you just mentioned. We're all feeling the same thing. When something's taken from us, there's loss, and then we immediately react. So there's a crisis, we're react. So part of our reactivity, which feels like intentionality, I want to add value, I want to overwork here, I want to prove myself. Some of us, it's more reactivity. So it's reaction, and it's more out of probably insecurity that I'm not enough. And so some folks would think, well, I'm missing out. I need to add value and make sure people know that I'm working. But actually, it's not the fear of missing out as much as it is the dread of just not producing. It's kind of the dread of being known as a slacker. None of us want to be the employee that's slacking off right now from home. And so the way that we're overcompensating is we're trying to outprove ourselves. So we are pushing ourselves to the edge of our endurance to just make ourselves feel better. And it's easy to get caught in that. Well, the dilemma there is that it doesn't make us feel better, because by pushing to the edge of our endurance, we're actually looking back and we see drift. What I mean by that is we're drifting away from who we kind of want to be right now, as someone who's just healthy, someone who's taking care of ourselves, or someone who is close to our spouse, someone who's fully engaged emotionally and mentally with our kids at home and our families. We're drifting from who we want to be in our personal life because we're obsessed about achieving professionally, so that we're not perceived as a slacker, that we're not adding enough value.
Yeah, and that goes back to a conversation I had earlier. I mean, I guess that can put us on the brink of burnout as well. It sounds like this drive to just prove ourselves and add more value and go, go, go.
Yeah, and it's a vicious cycle, because if we feel like we're behind, we push harder, and the harder we push on the edge of our capacity, and we're burned out, we don't feel good, and then we feel like we're slacking at home. We're slacking, we're not pulling our weight with doing the dishes or whatever it is in the home or with our kids, and we're getting griped at by our spouse, and our spouse who's also working needs to find time in his or her day to run and work out and get free of the kids for a moment and get on Zoom calls. And so if we feel behind there, we feel like we're just always behind.
Yeah.
And we react by trying to push ourselves even harder.
I guess I've had to ask the question a lot recently, like what's most essential? What I want, what do I want to focus on? We've talked in other calls about teams really identifying what's the most important thing to them. So
Yeah.
what do you think during the season where people might be pushing again to the edge of endurance for themselves, potentially leading to burnout? What would you recommend they stop and do right now to kind of course correct that?
I think you have to, I would say you have to be honest with yourself of what you need the most.
Hmm.
And if you actually need to change the way you work, if you're just trying to just work all the time to just try to feel like you're keeping up, um, you're probably not putting out really good work products. So it could be that you need more cadence. In other words, what we know also from research with mental focus and productivity is deep work sessions. And what that means is even if you had an hour, up to an hour and a half, even 90 minutes would be the best. But even if you had 45 minutes to an hour to lock yourself or in your car and get away, um, to just really focus intensely on work, you're actually going to produce more and better work in that 45 to 60 minutes than you would in 3 hours of being distracted.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out what is it I need the most and what is getting me down? What is getting in my own way right
Something you said last week, we were talking about even the idea of a 10 to 4 maybe work time where you're really productive from 10 to noon, take an hour off of lunch, go outside, do something, then come back and do some work, and then at some point cut it off for the day, play with kids. That seems much better than, I think, I can't remember the phrase used, but that we kind of lazily
now?
interact with work for 8 hours a day and try to do multiple things at once. It seems like we don't make as much progress.
Absolutely. No, when we're trying to do everything all together, we're not doing anything well.
Yeah.
So it's just focusing on what's the one big thing. And if the one big thing is I got to figure out how to do some undistracted work focus, then, and you got kids at home that are trying to homeschool and you got a spouse who also has a job, you got to figure out how to put a rhythm and cadence into your workday. And yeah, we were talking about the 10 to 4. I love that because you wake up, you eat well, you start with or you go for exercise or a run or something. So you're feeling healthy. You got some physical exercise. You wake the kids up, feed them healthy meals. So good breakfast to start. And then you spend time really engaged around their schooling. Because if you felt like you were taking really good care, whether you're the husband or the wife or the whatever, you're taking good care of your kids, you're taking good care of your home and your family, you're going to feel confident. And then that's going to help you have, um, uh, a focused, deep work session without distraction to do really creative, excellent work for a period of time. And then you just choose, hey, how many of those sessions can I do in a day? And some people can only do 2 of those, one before lunch, one after lunch. Some people can do 3 of those. But you got to make sure that you also build in time to get outside, let your brain rest and recover, get some physical activity, get your kids outside, eat well, take care of yourself. And it's got to be in balance. And some folks don't have a choice because maybe the work demands are that way. So that's why you and I have been trying to get conversations with some stakeholders, the people that can set boundaries for their teams that they work with to put a limit on when the calls can happen. And so that's why we're saying let's do all the calls between 10 and 4 so that it creates margin in the beginning of the day to start really well on the things that matter most. And then end your day really well. Have an end point so you don't have to worry about being a slacker after 4 if you got to really take care of whiny kids that are hungry and irritated and people want to get outside and you got to figure out how to cook dinner because everybody's cooking dinners now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But it, it's a little bit of work to make a healthy dinner at night.
Yeah. And I think a lot of teams feel like that productivity is up, but I think the nuance is a lot of productivity is up because people are just pushing. That's a different type of productivity that where there's a cadence, it sounds like, where you're taking care of yourself. Because in the day, that productivity that's just push, I think is what I'm hearing leads to burnout. But the productivity that's up because people have a cadence or taking care of themselves is ultimately going to lead to growth and to teams really thriving during this time and after this time.
Yeah, because what you want is you just don't want productivity. You want
Yeah.
excellence.
Yeah.
And that excellence is going to come in the realm of creativity, innovation, and ideas. And if you're stressed and you're distracted, you're not creative. Our brain cannot be creative and angry at the same time. We
Yeah.
know that from brain research. Those neurons fire from the exact same place in the brain. So if your employees are distracted, it looks like they're being productive, but if they're distracted, they're not being creative. So
Yeah.
you don't want productivity, you want creativity.
Well, I have all
That's
my
actually
best
what
ideas out when I'm on a run, if I could just capture that stuff.
I know.
Ah,
Yeah, exactly.
good. Well, cool, man. It's good talking today, and we'll catch up later.
You bet.
All
Take
right.
care, Rhett.
Thanks, Todd. Bye.
Yeah.